is Gretchen Quadra, and as most of you know, I work as a voice and accent trainer with WNS Global Services in Mumbai, India. And obviously, I am not from around here, I'm from the US. And today, I just would like to tell you about some of the things that, the differences between Eastern cultures and Western cultures in our world. And as the 21st century keeps going forward and things become more and more global, the East is adopting much of the West lifestyles, and West is adopting much of the East lifestyles as well. So we're slowly becoming very much alike. However, there are still a lot of things that are still quite different. And so some of those differences I'd like to start with, especially since I personally have experienced them living here for about 2 years now. In fact, I think it's more than that. And I am still learning. It's quite a learning experience for me, being an American. The first one is the family unit. Families here they're very close. And they're very big. There's a very strong family support, which I really like a lot. I just think it's so great if you're going through something difficult, whatever that might be, to know that you have a big force of people behind you to help you through whatever that is, and that's wonderful. Sometimes, especially in the U.S., it can seem isolating sometimes. If you feel like you're all alone and there's no one there to help you. Too many people in Western countries, they tend to, in the U.S. especially, they're kind of on their own, and for the most part. And so it's nice to see a very strong family unit in the Eastern cultures. With that said, of course, there are pros and cons to that. With Western families, it's usually the immediate family, the parents and the child, and the grandparents at the most. They're the ones that know everything. They're the tight-knit. They're the source of support. You don't really go outside of that to your aunts or uncles or whoever, or your neighbors. On Eastern countries, it's not just your immediate family, it's your extended family. It's the neighbors in your society, your housing society. It's, all of that together it's that collectivism is what it's called. And in the West Coast, it's more of an individualism, especially the U.S., very much like that. And so individualism can be isolating, just me and myself. So it's nice to have that collectivism where everybody's in it together and everybody helps each other out. And on the other hand of that, the con for me, being from the West, is that oftentimes I don't have privacy. There are times that I need to have my space, and I just feel like there's someone always there, in sort of in my face, and I'm not necessarily, but sometimes I just feel like I need to be alone for some time because I'm not used to that. Always someone there. Which goes to, especially when you're eating, especially if you come home and you have dinner late, or maybe you woke up late, you have breakfast late, and so maybe your mother or someone sits there in front of you while you eat. That's something very common here, which kind of makes me self-conscious. I'm like, don't watch me eat, please. So, but that's just what they do. That's what the mother does, and it just shows that she cares about her child. She's making sure that the child is eating properly, and so, they do that to show their love. And of course, when you're offering food to someone, Mumbai is not so bad, but I know when I've gone up to Delhi, oh my goodness, every 5 minutes, eat, you have to eat. You want something? No, no thank you, I'm good. And they'll still bring a big plate of it there anyway. And I'm like, I didn't want any, I said, So that's a way of showing love, but if you're from the West, sometimes that can kind of get tiresome after a while. You're like, no, I just ate 5 minutes ago, I don't need to eat again, So in the West, it's more, your yes is yes and your no is no, and then that's just how it is. And I know people from the East that visit someone from the West, and then someone from the West will offer them something, and then someone from Eastern country will say no, thank you, and then that's it. And then they'll be like, well, they didn't offer me again. Why? Well, it's because we don't know that there's a tradition to that, and that we're supposed to offer you again. So, on our part, we're sorry because we don't know. Because, everything is, yes is yes, no is no, and that's it. And so, sometimes I know that people in the West, when, if they visit a country in the East, they can be seen as probably distant and aloof. I know I am often seen that way, and, maybe there are times where maybe I could be in that mood. But it's not because we don't care. It's just that we're not used to that. We like people, we like being around people, but not that closeness all the time. We're not used to that. And especially with personal space. People in the West, the personal space is much larger. It's about 2 feet or maybe arm's length. In Eastern countries, it's much smaller, so sometimes somebody will come up to me and I will be, they'll be too close. And I'm like, can you step back a little bit because you're too close? Because that's what I'm used to. Another thing that I'm not used to with, as far as East and West goes, is when people, queue up. In Britain, they call it queuing up. In the U.S., it's you're getting in line and you're waiting your turn for something, whether it's the ATM or wherever it is. You're at a fast food place. And I know when I'm at the canteen at where I work, I see all of the people just going at the cashier at once, all that, placing their order and give me this, give me that, and giving the money and however. And he takes it on. He can decipher who said what and who paid what, and I hats off to that person, because that's how people are. You're used to hearing so many people speak at you at the same time, and that's just amazing that you can tell who's saying what. We're not used to that in the Western countries, so we're not very good. We need one person at a time to talk to us. Don't all of you come at me and say, hey, I need this, because I'm not going to have a clue what you said. And, one person at a time. And along the lines with that, talking over a person and interrupting them. Here it's not as offensive as it is in the West. In the West, it's considered very rude to interrupt and talk over someone. It shows a lack of respect for the speaker, for the person who's talking. And you want to avoid that. Sometimes it happens by accident, and if it does, you just say, oh, I'm sorry. I didn't mean, please continue, I didn't mean to interrupt you. So, absolutely, no interrupting in the West. Over here, people talk over each other all the time, and, you're say something and then somebody else is saying something at the same time. Everybody is talking over each other, and sometimes I end up thinking I'm watching an Arnab Goswami program. Not really, but it's not that bad. But still, sometimes it almost gets to that point, and I don't have a clue what anyone is saying, and it gets chaotic, and then I'm kind of like, all right, come on now, let's tone it down. And so I'm not used to the constant interruptions and talking with people. The concept of time as well. Time is very precious in the West. Time is money, and we see it as time is linear. So we are very, if we realize any time that we waste, we're not going to get it back. So we're very careful with how we use our time. And in Eastern countries, time is kind of more of a circular kind of concept. And so sometimes, people just are kind of, I'm like, we have to be here at this time. And they're like, yeah, so what? So people are much more punctual in the West than they are here. The work culture here also is different in many ways. Now I work, working for WNS, which is an international company. I don't deal with this so much, but it is there a little bit, and that is just in the West, people don't merge their work with their personal life or their, you go to work, you do your job, your shift ends, you come, and then it ends when it's supposed to end. You come home, and that is your time to yourself and or your family. And hardly anybody ever calls you for any other work, about any other work, unless it's an emergency. Professions like a doctor or anything like that, where you're just kind of, then yes, that does happen sometimes. But typically, work doesn't interfere with your family or any life or whatever else you're doing outside of work. And over here, it's just kind of, interwoven. You come home, but you're probably still working. People will probably still call you about something, or maybe you'll have a meeting over the phone, and it doesn't really end. And especially after the lockdown and all of us working from home, it's, even more so. Although I know that WNS is so much, they're much better about this than many other companies I've heard of, where the employees are working 18 hours a day. So I'm very blessed with the company I'm with now. And they don't do that. And even given that the processes we work for are 24/7 processes, and so sometimes things will come up no matter what hour, and they have to be dealt with. So even considering that, it's very good. But it is something that I am having to get used to sometimes. I'm like, oh my gosh, it's 10 o'clock at night, and they have, I need to do this, and it's you just roll with it. You say, okay, these things are going to happen, and I need to be there to solve it, and it's fine. You're there, and you can get the job done, and then kudos to you. But yeah, I'm still learning that, and being there, and doing what is expected of me. Communication. Eastern countries have what is called a high context style of communicating, which means that people in the East are more able to read between the lines. There's other subtle things that you can pick up on, so you're not as direct with your communication as people are in the West. And many times you don't need to be. But me coming from the U.S., sometimes somebody will say something to me, but I won't pick up on what they really meant. And then there'll be a miscommunication there, because in the U.S., you need to be direct and say it like it is. Say what you mean and mean what you say. And so, it may seem that there's, that Western people might come across as very abrupt or rude because they're so direct. And that's not their intent. That's just because they don't have time to have, try to understand what someone else is saying, so they want you to be direct with them, and in turn they're going to be direct with you. And so if you're, especially with customer service, if you're on the phone with someone from the U.S. or wherever, and they ask you a question, you want to say, I hear a lot of people saying, I'd like to inform you, Mrs. Smith, that this is not available, and this will have to be done, and you don't need to go into that long spiel. Just say, yes, Mrs. Smith, we can do that, or unfortunately, Mrs. Smith, this option is not possible. So just say it like that and keep it crisp and simple. You don't need any long sentences or any formal words or anything of that nature. People in the East tend to be extremely formal, especially when they're in a business or working. And you don't need to do that when you're dealing with a Western country. There's a lot of other differences there. Personal questions. Don't ask someone how much money they make. old they are, how much they weigh, you're married for how long, why don't you have kids, or why aren't you married yet? These are very personal questions that someone from the West would be very offended by, because that's very personal. So do not ask those questions. And things in the East just take a lot longer than they do in the West. There's a red tape there and bureaucracy here that you don't, while it's there in Western countries, it's not to such an extent. And so I know for me sometimes, I'm probably seen as a very impatient person, and I probably am. But that's just because I'm just used to things not taking as long as they do here. And I'm having to learn that, and it's just a big learning experience. And things just take longer, and things don't work as well. And it's all of having to learn to be flexible, and that's just something that I need to learn. And you know, it's even after 2 years living here, it's an experience. These are my personal experiences of living in an Eastern country. I will tell you that I love the people I work with. I love the people I talk to, and everyone here is just absolutely wonderful. And I love the hospitality and just the closeness, and I'm just very fortunate. And I thank you very much for watching, and I hope that you've learned something from this, and that will help you better communicate with people all across the globe. Thank you, and have a great day.